Hello and welcome to today's build guide where we'll be building a Polar Mini, the perfect miniaturized controller for your ToneX One with a built-in 1.69-inch LCD display. This guide's perfect if you want to build your own from scratch or if you'd like to repair or modify your device in some way. So let's take a look at what we'll need. So for this build, you will need your Polar Mini enclosure. This is a 3-part enclosure with a top, which has 4 heat set inserts in it. These are 4mm long for an M3 thread. You can find a link to the exact dimensions you'll need if you want to build your own from scratch on the GitHub repo for the build. Then there's a bottom part of the enclosure and then also a middle plate which is going to mount our carrier board and the LCD display board. You'll also need 4 9mm M2 screws for securing the carrier board to the LCD, as well as 4 M3 7mm screws for keeping the enclosure all together in the final assembly. You'll need a 30mm JST SH 12-pin cable, and this needs to be constructed with a B-type wiring. So if you have a look at where the contacts are on here, it actually alternates so the contacts aren't on the same side. That's important. You'll need the custom carrier PCB, which has our power input conditioning as well as MIDI input circuitry and connections to the main board. You'll notice that this has 2 JST PH connectors, and this is because we use the same board for the Mini as for the Plus, and the Plus has 2 foot switches, but for the Mini they are not needed. So if you're populating your own board, you don't need to populate these 2 header connectors. Then, not essential, but we also ship our devices with this custom overlay. It's a custom clear acrylic overlay with printing for the graphics as well as blackout sections and cutouts there for connector accessibility. So the first thing to do is take your carrier board and assemble it onto the carrier plate. You'll see some cutouts here in the plate, and that is for airflow as well as clearance for the through-hole connector pins on the PCB. And you'll know it's aligned correctly when it sits flush with the carrier plate like that. Then check that your LCD board also fits onto the mounting holes. It's designed for this specific board with this standoff pattern, and they will be assembled so that the 2 JST SH connectors align on the same end. When you're handling the display board, make sure to handle it by the edges only. There's a very delicate ribbon connector here, which if you press on that with your fingers or you're not careful, you can damage. So try and be really aware of where you're holding the board. So take the JST connector cable and plug it into your carrier PCB like so. Then feed the cable through the hole and make sure that your carrier PCB is able to sit nice and flush with that plate. Take the LCD board and plug the connector into it like so. Again, making sure to be really careful of that front section with the ribbon cable. Now that should fold in on itself and align nicely. There is a little bit of springiness in the JST cable, so you may find it pops up, but that's where we're going to assemble this into place using our M2 screws. So I like to put one through one of the holes, through the plate, to help with the alignment, and then screw that into place, which is just going to keep everything pinned in together so that we can insert the rest of the screws without too much trouble. And be careful that you're using the right length screw, because if you're using a screw longer than 9mm, you can get away with 10mm, but I wouldn't recommend it. It can actually push the standoff off the board if you are over torquing it, so be careful. Then put the remaining 3 screws in, ensuring good alignment with the LCD board. Now you may find, due to the springiness of the JST cable, that you need to just loosen the first screw that you've put in to make sure that these standoffs are sitting nice and flat against the mounting posts. Then you can go in and just retighten for that extra little bit. Make sure that they're all fairly tight without over torquing them. With our LCD carrier board in place, this isn't a bad time to check that the screen functions as expected, and you can also flash the firmware at this stage. This board has the firmware already flashed, and I'll cover the firmware flashing process in a separate video for all devices. You can plug it into the USB connector and it will provide power to the board. Now you may notice, like on this board, that there's a small static noise coming from the built-in speaker on the LCD. And that's just simply due to, as I understand it, a manufacturing difference on some of the board variants. They all are labeled version 2, which shouldn't have this issue, but on some of them you can hear a very small static noise, and that is just in terms of the firmware not handling that. It's not an issue, and it doesn't creep into the audio path or effect operation at all, and it's incredibly quiet that you won't notice it when you're using it. Most of the boards don't have this issue, but just in case you purchase a board and in a one-off you get a slightly different version, just note that you might hear that, but it's not going to affect the functionality. Now, take our assembled middle plate and insert it into the top shell of the enclosure. Do this very carefully. You may also need to peel the protective cover off your LCD as well if you haven't already. Do this nice and carefully, making sure everything aligns, because you don't want your LCD going in on an angle and causing damage. The top part of the enclosure should sit flush with the middle part. From here, we can take the bottom part of our enclosure and insert it in, and you'll notice that this 3.5mm connector actually pokes through the enclosure slightly, so you can't just put it straight on. Instead, on a slight angle, insert it like so, and then it will drop into place. Now we can take our M3 screws and finish the assembly. And again, you don't want to over tighten those screws, just nice and hand tight is fine with a decent Allen key wrench. And there we have our assembled Polar Mini, and the top faceplate can be easily installed by removing the adhesive backing and then putting it on top, making sure to align it correctly with the notches, because as you can see, they are different sizes. And that's it. You've got your assembled Polar Mini ready to go to control your ToneX One live in the bedroom, in the studio, wherever you need it. Check out our other build videos linked below, and also the firmware flashing video in case you need to flash your firmware. Cheers.